All right. We are now a couple days after the launch of Zenless Zone Zero 2.0, and we've had a lot of mixed reactions when it comes to 2.0. Most of them being that this patch has been kind of mid. And honestly, as someone who really likes the game, I'm not really going to disagree with that take. I just want to kind of give my thoughts on the whole 2.0 situation with Zenless Zone Zero, how the patch feels, what I hope for the future of this of the game, what the patch kind of lays out, and obviously the problems of the patch for Zenless Zone Zero 2.0. Now, with 2.0, let's start with the mid. I don't actually think there's anything really particularly bad about the patch, but there is the mid and there is the good. Right, so let's just start with the mid. The semi-open world. Now, the semi-open world was actually a massive change to the game, which I think was nice. I think it was a nice change. It's something to do in the game. I think I personally would kind of think of Zenless Zone Zero akin to like a more refined version of PGR, where it's like you're kind of fighting in particular zones with a bunch of loading screens in between, right? And that honestly it gets boring, right? So I think them adding the semi-open world was a good idea. Obviously, I hope they don't try to go the same route as Weather Waves and Genshin, where it's a massive open world. We don't need that shit. Zenless Zone Zero doesn't need that. That's not what Zenless Zone Zero is. I think the current state is that the current baseline of what they added was okay. I think it definitely needs to be more fleshed out. There's not really a lot to do in that open world. I think they could have added more puzzles, some more stuff you can do in that place, more stuff you can find. I think they could have explored a little bit more with the ideas of what they could have put in that game, or in the semi-open world. But I think the idea is good. I think it does lay the groundwork for something more interesting down the line. But right now it's a little bit clunky. It's a little bit bare bones. I'm not gonna lie. But at the end of the day, it is a W that they put it in because it is something more to do in the game, right? What else will we consider mid in the patch? The story. Now, I'm not gonna lie, the story good, but they did add, it was kind of lackluster in comparison to what they've done in the past. There was a lot of white screen black text, which normally I personally wouldn't really give a fuck about, but compared to what they did with before, even 1.7 and 1.7 had a little bit of white screen black patch, white text black screen. But particularly my issues with the story, what they did so far, was they bundled the introduction of the Wi-Fi Peninsula with the main story, which kind of made it feel unnecessary, when in reality they could have just taken that whole section of when they were trying to introduce you to all this new stuff. Like they're trying to introduce you to the new area, the new confined area with the no loading screen, so everything, the new area, Wi-Fi Peninsula, all the new like they sort of introduce you to the new main hub, right? Because Wi-Fi Peninsula is supposed to be the new main hub for everything. So it took a lot longer than it should have to introduce all of that. And the entire time I was thinking they could have just made that into a separate event. They didn't need to add that to the main story. Like I feel like that was kind of unnecessary. It kind of bloated the story a little bit, not by much, but the entire time I was there, I was thinking, why couldn't they could have just made this like a separate event that could have just introduced you to this whole thing. They didn't need to add this to the story, which kind of made that a little bit more bloated than it needed to be. And honestly, the story, I'm not gonna lie, I think the story was decent. It was nothing crazy. It was decent, right? I do think that they kind of rushed the ending because of the introduction, so it kind of left a little bit more to be desired. But once again, they did leave a little bit of more groundwork for me to be more interested in what they're going to do in the future. Now, what else would I consider mid? The new UI. Now, you might be thinking, what the fuck, the new UI? Why would I say that's mid? Actually not mid. I actually think the new UI is actually pretty good, but it is a lot all at once. I think the change was good. I do think the change was very good. I do think it's a lot more in detail. I think a lot more people will be able to use that map more fluidly than the old UI. However, it is a lot to take in all at once. The next thing I wanted to talk about, which was the Ellen buff. My god, they knocked it out the park with that. I'm not even gonna lie. I was very when I saw the buff, when I saw that they announced the buff on the live stream, I was a little hesitant at first because I saw that they kept the charge attack in the kit, and honestly, the charge attack was the biggest reason why Ellen felt like shit because it had so much downtime and it was so hard to keep up her flash freezes without the charge attack, right? But surprisingly enough, they made it work. They added 3 new attacks to her main attack, to her normal attack rotation, which all 3 of them don't consume the flash freeze. And now her charge attack is also a parry, which also charge. So when you get parried, right, when you do a parry with the charge attack, it instantly gives you the charges for the flash freeze. So it makes managing her flash freezes so much more manageable. It's actually like she's actually very fun to use. I'm not even gonna lie. Now, she's obviously not a Miyabi, but honestly, I don't think anybody should be a Miyabi, so I think that's a good thing. I think anybody who wanted her to be a Miyabi kind of just wanted to kill the game. Like, I think her not being Miyabi is a good thing, but she's significantly better. She's significantly more fun to use. She does more damage. She's a lot more viable. Plus, they changed her core passive. Or not her core passive. Well, they did change her core passive, but the one I'm talking about. They changed like her team enabled ability, right? Where now she can work with stunners, which means she can work with Trigger, she can work with a lighter, she can work with Shinji, she can work with all the stunners now without only being able to use Lycon, right? So that opens up her viability to use a lot of different team comps. Next on the docket, Yi Xuan. My god, did they cook with this character, and oh my god, did they give her the biggest breasts known to man. Yi Xuan is actually the funnest character I've ever played in a gacha game. She's so much fun to use. She's also the most fucking complicated to use. She has 3 EX attacks, 2 different charged attacks, 2 different ultimates. It's wild. It's wild, but she's also very fun to use. Now, this is where the controversy happens. With Yi Xuan, they added the miasma. The miasma. They added the miasma. Now, people brought up a valid concern about this because Yi Xuan clears the miasma faster than every other character in the game. Now, if you don't know what the miasma is basically a shield that comes up that you need to clear in order for them to continue taking more damage. And once you do clear it, they take a significant chunk of damage, plus the daze bar immediately fills up, so you can continue to do more damage when they're dazed. So that's basically the whole miasma thing. And while the miasma is up, they go fucking buck shit wild, and they go crazy berserk while they're in miasma. Right, so that's the whole miasma mechanic. Now Yi Xuan clears the miasma faster than any other character in the game. Now, I pointed that out, and I think it's a 100% valid concern. I think anybody who was like, you're spreading misinfo, I think they're the same people that are just like, it's not HP inflation, you just suck. It's like, brother, come on now. You know what I mean? It's a valid criticism. It is. It's a valid concern. Now, however, 2 things can be true at the same time. It is also true. It is true that Yi Xuan clears this faster than anyone, and it's scummy. It's sneaky. It leaves a bad taste in people's mouths because this is Hoyoverse, right? So it can have a concern for the future. However, at the same time, it is also true in the current state of miasma, Yi Xuan isn't needed at all. She isn't needed. Koleda clears the miasma almost as fast as Yi Xuan. She really does. Now, that's not me saying that Yi Xuan isn't a concern. She is, but in its current state, I think the miasma is a non-issue. Now, obviously, with time, it could become an issue in the future, but I'm not going to sit here clenching my asshole on something that could happen 6 months from now, right? In the current state, I think the miasma is fine. I actually think the miasma is kind of fun. I'm gonna be honest. The way that makes all the enemies go berserk, and now you have to be quicker with your inputs, be quicker with your reactions. I actually think it's kind of fun. But I can understand people not liking the miasma. You know what I mean? I can understand them being like, okay, this is a mechanic that I don't really like. You know what I mean? I can understand that. Now, I think that's basically everything I've covered, or everything that I cared about from the 2.0 patch. So I guess it's just what my thoughts are on the patch as a whole. As a whole, obviously this isn't as groundbreaking as the Wuthering Waves 2.0, right? And honestly, I do think it might be a little obtuse to compare the 2.0 to Wuthering Waves and 2.0 to Zenless Zone Zero. And the only reason why I say that is because the Wuthering Waves 2.0 had to be the game changer that it was. Otherwise, the game would have fucking flopped, right? So I think it's a more valid comparison to say Wuthering Waves 2.0 is similar to Zenless Zone Zero's 1.4, where they had to change the game at its foundation, at its core, in order for it to not flop. And Zenless Zone Zero wasn't in a situation where they had to change everything about the game in order for the 2.0 to be a massive success, right? Zenless Zone Zero was honestly in a decent state before 2.0. So the patch, although I do agree that the patch was a little lackluster, I do think that people kind of set their expectations a little unrealistically high about what they were expecting from 2.0. That's just my opinion. But at the same time, I do agree that this patch, they could have done more with this patch. 100%, they could have done more with this patch. For me though, I would probably give this patch like a 7 out of 10. I think a 7 out of 10 would be fair. I think I'll give this a patch 10 out of 10. It is good. It has a lot of groundwork that could lead for more stuff in the future. I'm actually curious about what they're going to do for 2.1. But at the same time, I can understand people's disappointment with this. I think if you're giving this patch anything more than a 7, I think you're coping way too hard. I actually think like you might just be like, you might have some Hoiverse dicks up your ass if you're giving this more than a 7 out of 10. And also, if you're also giving this less than like, at the same time, I also think if you're giving this patch less than a 5, then I think you're playing the wrong game. You know what I mean? I think if you're giving this patch less than a 5, because I actually don't think this patch was that bad. I really don't. But if you're giving this patch less than a 5, you probably already don't like the game that much, and you should probably just play something else. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that to be like, don't play my game. No, like genuinely, if you like, if the patch was that bad for you, just uninstall. It's not that big a deal. But that's just my thoughts. You can disagree, agree, but I'd love to hear what you guys thought about the 2.0.